Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Freedman, Matt F. the Oracle. Welcome to the Degenerate Sports Betting Show, brought to you by BetsTV and sponsored by the FTN Network, where you can get all the season-long and daily fantasy and sports betting content your degenerate heart desires, including my fantasy football write-ups and all of my NFL sides, totals, and player props. Use the highly original promo code Freedman for 20% off of your FTN subscription. That is Freedman for 20% off at FTN. Thanks for checking out the show. Subscribe to the BetsTV channel on YouTube and rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. All right, it is Monday afternoon. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the markets of tonight's Monday night football game. Producer Thomas Viola, sidekick on the controls, Connor Stewart, pasta, Titan and tomato sauce, Billy Joel Junkie, and long-suffering Jets fan. Tom, let's get into it. Let's talk about Giants at Buccaneers for Monday Night Football.
Matt, this game to me, I am just all about the big question here. You have a Buccaneers team that's supposed to be very good, has been playing poorly the last 2 weeks. Brady's laid 2 eggs in a row now. They're supposed to be good. The Giants are supposed to be bad, but then we look against the spread here. The Giants are 5-4. The Bucs, they've been terrible covering the spread. They're 3-6 ATS this season. The line sits around Bucs 11, which means a little Giants money came in because it opened 12.5, but 11 points is an awful lot tonight. What do you think?
So think about Tom Brady and how great he was covering the spread for years in New England. With Bruce Arians, he is 15-14 against the spread. Like, he could not be any more mediocre against the spread throughout his tenure with the Bucs. I'm going with the Giants. It's a disgusting bet. I don't really like making it, but it feels like it's the, quote unquote pro side. You have the Bucs who, obviously won the Super Bowl last year, lost 2 games in a row. I think public bettors are going to be backing them under the theory that they are due to bounce back against the uninspiring Giants and that the Bucs will be, more motivated or whatever to get a big win. And I don't doubt that the Bucs will actually win. I still think that they are a good team despite what we've seen from them recently. And I think the Giants are, hashtag not good, but are the Bucs going to win by more than 10 points? And right now, if you look at the odds tool that we have at FTN Bets, you see that across the market, most books, this is 10.5. At Caesars, it's 11. I don't know. I don't think that the Bucs are going to win by more than 10. The Giants are coming off of the Week 10 bye, so they've had extra time to prepare for this game, and even like an extra day on top of the normal time that you have to prepare for a game coming off of the bye. And Joe Judge knows Tom Brady well from their time together in New England. You have running back Saquon Barkley returning from his ankle injury. The Bucs are without Vita Vea, their defensive tackle, who really is the run game clogger for that defensive unit. With Barkley, without Vea, I think the Giants actually might be able to run the ball better than we would expect, given the matchup that they have. And this year, each week, this trend gets bigger and bigger. Road underdogs are an outstanding 62-35-1 against the spread, right? And I think part of that, we've talked about this trend on the show before. Part of it is that this year, bettors are overvaluing home team advantage, home field advantage. But, some of it is just who in their right minds wants to bet on a bad team, an underdog team away from home. And part of it is that I think there is much more parity in the league this year than what we've seen in past seasons. I can't really identify why that is the case, but if you just look at what we have seen now through 11 weeks, there isn't much separating, with the exception of, let's say, like the best teams and the worst teams, and maybe not even the best teams. We'll just say the worst teams. There's not much separating a lot of the teams in the middle. And it is a very big middle. Let's say like the 24 teams in the middle of the league, there's really not much separating all of them on a given week. And if bettors are overvaluing home field advantage, that could really be the difference here. And I think it's worth saying that Joe Judge and quarterback Daniel Jones, as uninspiring as they are, they have excelled in this spot as road underdogs. As a road dog, Judge is 9-2 against the spread. Daniel Jones is 11-3 against the spread in this spot. I first bet this at plus 12 on Sunday night, shortly after lines were released. I still think there's value at 10.5 and 11. So this is the side that I am taking. Giants plus 10.5, plus 11 on the road against the Buccaneers.
How about the total? I feel like we whiffed majorly on Sunday Night Football. There was 2 under teams, and they played a ridiculous shootout.
Yeah.
This total, we're seeing it. It was 51. It's moved down to 50. Still, they're obviously expecting a lot of points here. But if we like the Giants, that should incline us to the under.
Yeah, I'm not betting this. The Bucs are 28-16 to the over with Bruce Arians, so they are an over team. The Giants, though, they're an under team with Joe Judge, and so you kind of put it together, and based on the fact that I am going with the Giants, one way that the Giants win, or one way that underdogs win, especially big underdogs win, is if it's a low-scoring game. So I'm staying away from the total here.
All right, but now we get into the real meat and potatoes of the show. This is what the people come for, Matt. It is time to do some prop betting.
Okay. What I didn't know that was a pregnant pause. I didn't know if you wanted me to say anything there.
So I was actually peeking behind the curtain here for a second. We're not using my StreamYard right now. We're using the network StreamYard. And so because of that, I don't have all of the overlays I normally have. I was fully planning to go down and change it to the Propapalooza.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I realized I don't have it here. So that just did not quite work out.
Yes. Well, too bad, but it made for great hashtag radio.
Oh, it absolutely did for radio. Everybody knows pregnant pauses are like the best thing you can do in radio.
Tom, I agree.
Let's go. All right. Let's start off looking at the quarterbacks here. Can I interest you in a passing yards prop? Daniel Jones, 244.5. Brady, 298.5. I feel like it all comes down to how you see the game scripting out.
Yeah, I think both of these numbers are right around where they should be. I wouldn't bet either one of them, to be honest. I really don't have much to say. We talked about this on last week's show, and very rarely do I bet yardage props, passing yardage props for quarterbacks. We talked about this last week. This week, I did bet one. It was with your beloved and very elite Joe Flacco, because he was going against a Dolphins team that has allowed, I believe his number was 225.5. He was going against a Dolphins team that had allowed every quarterback except one to go over that number. Like, that was a prop that was just egregiously low. But most of the time, the books are pretty good at nailing this number here on the passing yardage prop. And if they are wrong, most of the time, the real edge is not on betting the yardage prop, but on betting the prop that has to do with completions or attempts, because those numbers will be off to a greater degree. Here with Daniel Jones, with Tom Brady, I think these numbers are about right. So for me, it's a little bit of a stay away. If I had to take a side on either of these, I would go under just slightly with Daniel Jones. And if I had to take a side on Tom Brady's prop, I would go over, but just slightly. Again, not enough in either direction for me to take a position on it.
Okay, well, can I interest you in a completions or pass attempts prop then? Because we have one of each. For completions, you can bet on Tom Brady 26.5.
Let me look at this. 26.5 for Tom Brady.
I'm pulling this straight from DraftKings. Should pull it from Prop Shop.
Yeah. No, yeah, we do have the Prop Shop, but we have this projected for 26. So the answer is no. What's the line for Daniel Jones?
The line for Daniel Jones, pass attempts. They don't have completions for Jones, and they don't have attempts for Brady. Daniel Jones pass attempts 34.5.
Okay, I was gonna ask if I could guess. We have this projected for 35. Wow. So there's just there really is not the value normally in the quarterback market when it comes to the passing yardage props.
We're right on the number there. Let's move on to running backs here. Actually, let's go into some receiving yards here. Godwin, 70.5. Can I just win it over?
I am tempted. I will admit I am tempted by this over. This year, Godwin has 95.5 yards receiving on 9.5 targets in his 4 games without Antonio Brown. You compare that to his 5 games with Antonio Brown. He's had 67 yards receiving on 8 targets. And you see similar trends if you go back to last year and include like the totality of Antonio Brown's time with the Buccaneers with Tom Brady there. So this one, it does interest me. I'm not saying on whether I'm betting it or not. We do have the projections at FTN, which are done by Jeff Ratcliffe, who right now is number 1 in the Fantasy Pros accuracy contest for fantasy rankings. He, for years, has been a dominant rankings and projections impresario within the industry. I'm not going to say exactly where he is projecting it. He isn't going along as drastically with these splits. So I'm not saying that there necessarily is value in this in terms of the actual projections, but I am intrigued. I am intrigued by Godwin over 70.5 yards receiving.
Now, how about some of these others? I mean, Darius Slayton, 30.5, Mike Evans, 65.5. Gronk 29.5 might be interesting, but you might just not have any action because he might not play. He's expected to play, but there's a chance.
Yeah, these I could see value on the Gronk under. I would say that we have this projected very close to that line, but that is based under the assumption that Gronk plays a significant amount of the game. And maybe he doesn't. There's always the opportunity, especially with Gronk. He's like the Anthony Davis of the NFL. Like, it almost always makes sense to bet the unders on Anthony Davis because there's always an above average chance in any game relative to other players in the league that this guy suffers an injury during the game and doesn't complete it. So I could see going under on Gronk, and maybe he plays the whole game, but they just ease him back into it because they do have other good tight ends within that offense. So I could see betting the under there. If I were to bet this, that is the side I would take.
You're completely right about Anthony Davis unders too. I mean, lock of the century is under 1.5 eyebrows.
That's very good.
Thank you. I'm proud of that one. What about the receptions market? Godwin 6.5, Tony 4.5, and Evans 4.5. Anything strike your fancy?
Yeah, Godwin here is interesting in that he has been a producer with Antonio Brown off the field. He's had 7.25 receptions this year in 4 games without Antonio Brown. The number is 6.5. The splits say under. Jeff Ratcliffe's projections. Sorry, the splits say over. Jeff Ratcliffe's projections say under. It's normally not a smart idea to bet against Jeff's projections. So this is one instance where I'm just going to be staying away. If I had to bet this and I hadn't looked at Jeff's projections, I would be going over.
Now let's move on to some running backs here.
You know what? Actually, one second. You talked about, did you mention Kadarius Toney and Mike Evans?
Throughout their numbers, Tony 4.5.
Okay. I think it is worth looking at their numbers a little bit. Tony, I don't see much value there. I would go under, but that's accounted for, based on the extra juice to the under. Evans is plus 120 to the under. And that is a little bit interesting to me. If I were betting this, I would have the slight lean to the under because I do think that this is pretty close to 50-50. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet it or not, but right now that's the way I would lean.
The only issue there is that it's minus 170, so you're getting a little killed by the juice.
No. It's minus 160 to the over, plus 120 to the under. So I would be for Evans.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was still thinking about Tony. My bad.
Yeah. For Evans, I would be looking at plus 120 to the under because I do think this is 50-50 or pretty close to it. So I think, getting plus odds on something that's close to a coin flip, I think is pretty decent.
All right, that makes sense. Rushing yards. Leonard Fournette, 64.5. Let me guess, right on the number.
It's pretty close to our projection. Actually, Tom, why don't we play this little game? What do you think our projection is for Leonard Fournette?
I feel like we often come across this. I'm going to say 69.5.
It is 66. So
it's a little too high.
Very, very close to Fournette there. I don't see any value in betting on it.
Now, how about this? Dual threat quarterback Tom Brady over 0.5 rushing yards. I kind of like that. He's the king of the QB sneak for a reason.
Yeah. This prop has Freedman written all over it. A non-running quarterback rushing prop? Yes.
Not just a non-running quarterback, the non-running quarterback.
Non-running quarterback. Yes, of course. Of course I am betting on this. I think it is worth noting that if you looked at all of Brady's games with the Buccaneers, so looking at his games last year he almost never went over this number. And this is including the playoff games, right? He had, I believe, 19 or 20 games last year. He went over 0.5 yards rushing, and I think just 3 of those games, right? It is worth remembering, though, that Brady last year was playing with a season-long knee injury that really hampered his mobility. Now, it's not as if he's all of a sudden turned into a running quarterback this year, but he has gone over this mark of 0.5 yards rushing in 7 of 9 games this year. And he has shown more of a willingness to run relative to last year. So I do think that there is some value here. And Tom, you mentioned that quarterback sneak. Now, granted, we could see some kneel downs at the end of this game, which would drive this total to the under, and that would be devastating. But, we see a couple sneaks. We see him, take out of the pocket once, to pick up 2 to 3 yards. I think the sharp side on this one, and it has nothing to do really with like, oh, the Giants play this type of defense or the Giants are very good against run defense. It's nothing like that. It's based on the numbers, based on the frequency with which Brady is running just a little bit more than he was last year. I think the projection on this one would really be like 1.5 versus 0.5. And I know that doesn't seem like much of a difference, but when we're talking about the difference between 0.5 and 1.5, like that's a pretty massive difference. So I'm going over here.
All right, we're going to go off book here for a second. Let's talk some rushing attempt props. Leonard Fournette, what do you think the number's at?
Ooh, 14.5.
You nailed it. Right on the money.
Yeah.
Right on the money.
Yeah. 14.5 is kind of like the standard number of like, this guy is a lead back. And that's what he is. He's not a great player. He's not like the engine of his offense, but he's someone that they give the ball to.
He's a lead back in a slightly split carry backfield.
Yeah. So yeah, 14.5. Let me see what we have this projected for. We have this projected for 15. Yep. Like I think he ends up in that vicinity of anywhere from, like 13 to 16.
Now, how about Saquon? This one's really tough because he's coming back from injury, but he's had the bye week.
I'm going to say 12.5.
11.5.
11.5. Yeah. Let me see what the projection is for him. Ooh. That's interesting. I'm not going to say what our projection is for him, but we might be taking a position on this one. I'm just going to tease that out there. Yeah.
I don't know. This one scares me because he's coming off of that injury. If you re-aggravate it and you took the over, you're sunk. If they want to give him a pitch count, but I don't believe they're going to give him a pitch count. It does. It frightens me though. Like the Titans going up against a winless derelict team. It frightens me.
I'm not going to say too much about this because I want to save it for the FTN subscribers. I am going to be taking a look at Saquon's rushing props.
Okay.
Because I didn't see these. I I don't think the attempts prop was out early this morning when I was doing research on this. I'm going to be taking a look at Saquon's props, and I will probably making a bet, maybe even a couple of bets on this.
All right. Well, we'll have to find out about that. But what about Daniel Jones? Because he's only the line is set 20.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, I am a square, but normally when it comes to props, I'm something of a sharp square, but I feel like a very square in that I'm looking at some of the overs here with these players. I think I like the Daniel Jones over 20.5 yards rushing. As a road underdog, I think Daniel Jones is going to maybe more than we would expect be forced to drop back, or at least more than usual be forced to drop back. That could result in more scrambling yardage. And for the season, he has an average of 28.7 yards rushing per game with a median of 27. And, like as good as that running defense is for the Buccaneers, it's not as good as it normally is because there's no Vita Vea. And like run defense kind of doesn't matter as much for quarterbacks when these guys accumulate most of their yardage on scrambles, like outside of structure. So for a guy who's on median, like 50% of the time getting 27 yards on a per game basis, like I think this line is too low. Like I can understand if you knock a couple of yards off because he's going against a good defense. Maybe there's something about the way they play that limits rushing production to quarterbacks. You see that sometimes in a difference between like man defense and zone defense, but I don't know. I think this number should be at least 2 yards higher, but I would say more like 5 yards higher.
And one more bet that we got here that you want to take a look at, Kenny Golliday under 3.5 receptions.
Yeah, for the season, Golliday has an average of 3.2 receptions per game with a median of 3.5. So I think that this line is pretty much right on, but it is juiced to the under at Caesars plus 130. So I do think that this is pretty close to a coin flip. I will be looking at the under here, even without wide receiver Sterling Shepard. This game, again, close to a coin flip. I'm going to take the plus odds on the under.
Matt, we have some very unfortunate breaking news here on the show. Might be more relevant on the fantasy show, but we're going to talk about it here because it just happened. Jamal Swagnu has been placed on IR.
Wow.
This is devastating.
I am heartbroken. Instant reaction. I'm imagining that this means probably more usage overall for Laviska Shenault. Maybe a little more for Marvin Jones, but Tavon Austin, who is sort of like the guy that Swagnu has been doing a pretty good old school impersonation of, like Tavon Austin might actually start to get a little more run in that offense playing the Swagnu role. So we will see. We do have the waivers episode coming later today on the Freedman Fantasy Football Show. So I'm imagining we might talk a little bit about some of those guys.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the Monday Night Betting Breakdown. Matt, take us home because you got a little bit to get through.
Yes. Okay. So, unfortunately, Najee Harris did not get over 79.5 yards rushing last night on Sunday Night Football. So someone out there is eligible to receive $100, and that person is Gambling Savage. What a wonderful and very apt Twitter handle at Gambling Savage. So that is the winner. If you want to email to claim your prize, you should have some proof that you are who you say you are on Twitter. Because I'm imagining that your license doesn't just say Gambling Savage. So come up with some sort of like some screenshot, something that just shows that you are actually the Gambling Savage.
If his license does say that, though, that's the coolest thing ever.
It really would be. Even if it's like a fake McLovin type of license that shows that would work. And of course you can email in at support@ftnnetwork.com. Okay, that is the show. You can find all of my work at FTN. On Friday, I publish the fantasy football breakdown. On Thursday, the best bets article. On Tuesday, the fantasy rankings, which I update on Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. All throughout the week, in the FTN bets tracker, I'm putting in my NFL sides, totals, and player props. And on Twitter, on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app, and on FTN, you can see daily episodes of the Freedman Fantasy Football Show and the Degenerate Sports Betting Show. And always use the highly original promo code Freedman for 20% off at FTN. All right, that is the show. You can find me and Tommy V on Twitter at Matt F. The Oracle and TV at Work. Thanks for joining us, and see you next episode.